What is HelloFresh? With HelloFresh, you get farm fresh, pre-portioned ingredients and seasonal recipes delivered right to your doorstep. Skip the trips to the grocery store and count on HelloFresh to make home cooking easy, fun, and affordable. That's why it's America's #1 meal kit. Fall is right around the corner, and HelloFresh is there to help you plan for the busy season ahead with tasty dishes delivered right to your door. You just simply choose recipes and pick your delivery date, then lay back and enjoy the last days of summer, knowing that dinner is covered. Parents have enough back-to-school shopping and planning to do. Let HelloFresh get the groceries and save you some cash with pre-portioned meals, again, delivered right to your door. So when life gets busy, don't call for delivery, go with HelloFresh. I've been using HelloFresh for a while now, and I cannot tell you how much simpler making dinner has become. It really does give me one less thing to worry about. So go to HelloFresh.com/50whokilled and use code 50whokilled for 50% off plus free shipping. Again, go to HelloFresh.com/50whokilled and use code 50whokilled for 50% off plus free shipping. Slow Burn Media, an evergreen podcast, presents Who Killed, a podcast that provides a voice for the voiceless. Hello and welcome to episode 184, I think, of Who Killed. I'm your host, Bill Huffman, and this is a Slow Burn Media and evergreen podcast production. And on this week's episode, we are very lucky to be joined by the one and only Mr. Bill Thomas. Welcome to the show, Bill.
Wow, what an introduction. This is great. Thanks, Bill.
Well, you are the music man. I should have introduced you as that, but you have, all fun and games, but no, you actually have a very serious reason to be on this show, and you've been on this show before, and unfortunately, the reason that you've been on this show is because your association with the Colonial Parkway murders. And how does that work?
Well, my younger sister, Kathy Thomas, and her girlfriend, Rebecca Dowski, are the first two victims in the so-called Colonial Parkway murders. Do you want me to summarize the case real quick?
Yeah, absolutely. I think some of the listeners would love to hear your take on it, and just, go right ahead.
With the Colonial Parkway murders, what you have are 4 double homicides of couples in Lover's Lane situations in and around Williamsburg, Virginia. From 1986 to 1989, 4 couples were killed, approximately one couple a year. It's actually 3 years, 86, 87, 88, 89, in terms of looking at a calendar, but it's, obviously 4 different dates. And what we have are a lesbian couple, my sister Kathy Thomas and her girlfriend Rebecca Dowski, and then approximately a year later, a couple that had just met that day, Robin Edwards and David Knobling, were killed at a place called the Ragged Island Wildlife Refuge. And then about 9 months later, another couple who were on a first date, Keith Call and Cassandra Sandy Haley, were at a party at Christopher Newport University and were heading home for a 2 a.m. curfew and went missing. They've actually never been found, although it's been more than 30 years, so I don't think they're walking through the door tomorrow. So they are missing and presumed murdered. And then approximately a year later, a couple, but I use the term loosely, we can get into more details in a second, Anna Maria Phelps and Daniel Lauer went missing along Interstate 64 about 30 to 40 minutes away from where the other incidents had taken place. This is driving from Amelia County, Virginia, up near Richmond, down to Virginia Beach, where they had just moved. That couple goes missing, and then their bodies are found about 6 weeks later alongside Interstate 64. And interestingly, there's nothing in the forensics, the science, that links the 4 double homicides in the Colonial Parkway murders. And of course, you've got a lesbian couple, Kathy and Becky, followed by 3 straight couples. It's basic circumstances that led the media to coin this series of murders, the Colonial Parkway murders. And people often ask me about serial killers. We're not even certain that these four double homicides are actually related, although circumstantially they're very similar, incident to incident.
Yeah, as a matter of circumstance, I mean, you would look at, obviously you look at a map and you see where the bodies were found, and yeah, you can definitely make a connection. But yeah, you're right. I mean, it's easier, I think, for the public to digest when people do put a name to a case, even though if not all the names or victims within that case are involved. It just sort of keeps it in the public's mindset, kind of like the Long Island serial killer, the Green River killer. It just sort of, gives the public something to remember, because that's a very, I know it sounds kind of journalistic-y, like writing wise, but like it's a hook. It hooks you.
It does. And that was a very conscious decision. The media coined the phrase Colonial Parkway murders. Only two of the cases, two of the four, actually are linked to this Colonial Parkway, which is a 23-mile long national park. It's a ribbon of land alongside two rivers that link these historic sites, Jamestown, Yorktown, Colonial Williamsburg. And only two of the incidents really have a connection to the Colonial Parkway. The Thomas Dowski and Call Haley cases are at least linked to the Colonial Parkway. And then the other two incidents, Edwards Knobling and Phelps Lauer, are completely off the Colonial Parkway, about a half an hour or even 40 minutes in each direction from the center point, which we'll call the Colonial Parkway. But we, the families, recognized that we had more strength and leverage together than we did separately. We were dealing with two different agencies. Those cases that are linked to the Colonial Parkway are FBI cases, because that's federal property. And then the two cases that happened off the Colonial Parkway are Virginia State Police cases. And just to make things a little more complicated, they're handled by separate Virginia State Police investigative offices. And this is back in the 80s. The coordination between federal, state, and local law enforcement was not good. And, I see you nodding your head. We've seen this before in other cases.
It happens too often where the lack of communication between agencies leads to people falling through the cracks and, murders continuing. I shake my head, because it's just like in this day and age, obviously, with the resources or lack thereof, they'd be like, we're going to combine all these and just put them into one agency.
Right.
Because it's cheaper. But back then, they just did the old way, and who knows what they didn't even communicate.
They did ultimately, after several years and all the murders having taken place, they did put together a task force, and they did meet, and the information sharing got better. But unfortunately, by that point, the murder series appeared to end. And
I was going to say, the last murder, what year was that?
That was 1989.
Okay.
So it's been 30 to 35 years. And what we're hoping now is that with advanced forensics, and remember, back then, crime scenes weren't secured in the way they are now. This is before DNA is out of the lab. So, we were relying on fingerprints, hair analysis. The science of forensics was far less developed than it is now. And crime scenes were terribly compromised. I've talked to first responders who were there when Kathy and Becky's bodies were found in my sister's Honda Civic. Those first responders literally climbed inside the car with the bodies to examine them.
Right.
That's not how you'd handle a crime scene in 2022. But this is 1986, which seems like ancient history. From a scientific perspective, it probably was.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I think 86 was the first year they actually used DNA. And you got to figure how much of a stretch that was. It didn't become mainstream until, we really didn't talk about it until OJ, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
It kind of was like on the back burner, and then they talked about it a ton during, the OJ Simpson trial. But again, crime scene contamination. 2 officers climbed through the back of the Honda Civic. Well, unfortunately now the whole scene is contaminated, and you don't know what is what at that point.
No, it's true. Now, they've made significant efforts to go back. For example, a few years ago, the FBI came to visit me, my older brother Richard, my younger brother Jack, because we'd all spent time in that Honda Civic. As a matter of fact, I have very pleasant memories. My sister was a Naval Academy grad, and so my folks who were from Lowell, Massachusetts, up north of Boston, we bombed around in that Honda, back and forth between Annapolis numerous times. But for instance, this is about 5 years ago now, they were working back through evidence from my sister's Honda Civic, which the car is long gone, but they still preserved some of the interior panels and carpets and things like that. But they were looking to eliminate the 3 Thomas brothers because we and our DNA belong in that car because we traveled with my sister. And they actually went back to the first responders, the people I talked about a moment ago, and got their DNA. So what they're trying to do is work back through the maybe even hundreds of different pieces of DNA evidence that they found, looking for someone that doesn't belong in that Honda Civic, and that person could potentially be an offender.
So they're basically reverse engineering the crime.
It is, but it's extremely slow and time consuming.
Well, I can only imagine they're probably taking, the time and care that they should have taken in '86, but they didn't know any better. I mean, it's not like we're sitting here talking trash about the investigators or anything. It was just, there's 2 victims in a car. Let's check it out, and it's not their fault. Is what I'm trying
understood.
to get at.
And I can't criticize from a 2022 perspective something that happened 35 years ago. It isn't fair. What is legitimate criticism is that FBI Quantico is so backlogged that we're finding that when they send in evidence for basically retesting at this point, it's taking as long as a year for us to get DNA results. And that's every single time we send evidence in. And remember, we're talking about a lot of potential evidence. So one of the things that the Colonial Parkway murders families are so upset about is Virginia State Police and FBI now are falling back on your brother or sister's case is a cold case, and that makes you the lowest possible priority in the queue at the various labs. And then it's taking a year to get test results. You can see how glacial speed becomes the only speed with which this investigation moves. And that's incredibly frustrating for the families.
And I would say to that and to the families, there should be, don't put those in the same category. It should be its own thing. When a case becomes cold, you don't want it to go to the bottom of the list because there's a perpetrator still out there. It doesn't make sense. In my opinion, it's similar to the way that the government works with bidding contracts. We're going to take the lowest bid every time, but it's going to be crap. It's like, dude, no, let's acknowledge the situation for what it is.
Agreed. And one of the things we're running into a problem with, and we're going to be continuing to put pressure on the FBI and the Virginia State Police, we want them to use private labs, which have much more rapid turnaround. The private labs, whose science is actually better, and I mean significantly better than the FBI's, because the FBI cannot claim that they have the best crime lab in the world because they don't. The private labs have outstripped Quantico by a wide margin, and they're turning around evidence now in 6 to 12 weeks instead of a year. And I mean literally waiting a year every single time. And at this point, 8 of the 16 parents, you've got 8 victims, a mom and a dad for each of them. That's 16 parents. Half the parents have died waiting for answers in the Colonial Parkway murders. Both my parents are gone. And a number of us have lost our parents waiting for answers. And now what we have is a situation where we have this sort of sad transition. Now the advocates in the Colonial Parkway murders are almost all the siblings of the murder victims because that's how long this case is dragged on.
Yeah, this is one of those cases. It's very frustrating. I can't imagine what the pain that you've gone through. Can I ask how old were you when Kathy was?
I was a month shy of my 30th birthday when Kathy and Becky were killed. So I'm 65 years old now. I've been waiting more than half my life for answers in the Colonial Parkway murders.
That's a shame. See, that's where, and I hate to, I'll stand on my soapbox, but like,
go ahead.
I have to say, like, we have the cold cases. We have these, 250,000 unsolved homicides or whatever the number is. I'm sure it's higher or whatever the margin of error is, but it's around there. And if the private labs are so much better than the government labs, it's just like, why aren't we just sending this shit to them? No pun intended.
You have to ask the FBI and the Virginia State Police. They're the foot dragging and the bureaucratic.
It's an ego thing.
Yeah, it's foot dragging. It's bureaucracy. It's now they're hitting me with, well, we don't have the money.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask. If it was a funding issue.
Well, and you're telling me in the richest country in the world, we can't find a way to test, to move forward 250,000 cold case homicides?
And with those 250,000 cold cases, how many cases actually have DNA associated with them? Let's say it's half. All right, how much is it to get a DNA test? You probably know the answer to this.
Our friends at Othram Labs down in Houston, Texas, who were among the best, if not the best in the world, they're currently charging $5,000, which, by the way, there's no way that even covers their costs. But you're not making money doing DNA testing at $5,000 a pop, but that's what they charge. This is something that should be funded. Now, it's funny. I think I've jumped onto your soapbox with you. I hope your soapbox is big enough to hold both of us. This is something that should be a national priority. I think this should be a national scandal that there are 250,000 cold case homicides. See, we've all watched CSI and all of the procedural shows, and I like those shows too. But we've been sold a bill of goods that somehow advanced forensics and the way science works now in terms of DNA and other advances, that these cases are easily solved. They are, but only if they put time, attention, and resources into them in real life. And as we all know, things are not solved in 48 minutes on a TV show, and you come from a TV background.
Yeah, it's definitely something that we have been trained to believe that can be processed overnight almost. It's like fingerprints. It's like, not quite.
No.
Takes a little bit of time, and obviously it takes resources. But I mean, even if it's $5,000, I mean, okay, how many billions of dollars do we have that we put towards crap?
Well, and I have an idea.
It would take $1 billion. $1 billion.
Well,
and we could test
everything.
I
have an idea, which is, and it's just a rough idea. I'm not saying I've run all the numbers, but I come from a military family. My father, my older brother, Richard, and my younger brother, Kathy, all graduated from the United States Naval Academy. They're actually the first father, son, daughter graduates of Annapolis. So I come from a military background. And although I never served, we grew up with my dad being in the Navy, then my older brother, then my younger sister, and she died just a few months after leaving the Navy. I have this idea that we could take 100,000 people from the United States military, some of our best and brightest, and move them from the military into permanently funded positions in law enforcement. And the goal would be not dissimilar to when I was a kid. JFK, John F. Kennedy, announced that we were going to put a man on the moon in 10 years. And that's what we did. And much in the same way we've talked about cancer and other important goals for our country. We're spending way too much money on America's military. No disrespect. I come from a military family, but we are spending too much money. We're spending more money, I think, than the next 13 countries combined on our military. I think we should move 100,000 of our best and brightest from the U.S. military into law enforcement positions, which many military people would transition to anyway when they served their 20 years in the military. And our goal should be to cut the 250,000 cold case homicides by half in 10 years. And I think it could be done. I don't think it's such a crazy idea. It's just something I thought about one day. And I thought, let's move resources where they need to be, as opposed to continuing to overspend in the military area. Let's spend more on law enforcement. We have 17,000 law enforcement agencies across the country. The coordination is not great. We could improve the coordination and put money into science. This would create even more jobs, because then we'd be having all of these people doing advanced forensics and then investigating these cold case homicides. This would end up solving serial killings, sexual assaults. It would reduce crime across the country. Nobody's been able to tell me why they think this is a bad idea.
No, I think it's a fabulous idea. Another thing that I think of is, that the mandatory age to retire at the FBI. I mean, you have to retire at age 57,
which is crazy.
Which is too young, and this.
So people who were at the peak of their knowledge then are obligated to retire.
My point is, take those people, because I've talked with Phil Torsney. He was like, I wasn't ready to retire. I was fired up. I went to Afghanistan and did security, whatever, because I was, for another 5 years. Well, why didn't, I know this is magical thinking, but hey, maybe you think this is a practical idea. Let's say you retire you still have to retire at 57 from whatever field work you're doing, but you get the next 10 years or 5 years or whatever, and you work in the cold case department because you have all this knowledge that you've acquired throughout your years of service, and you can help all the younger people with other things. It's like, what are we doing with these people who at 57 are told they can't do their job anymore?
Right, and have phenomenal experience and great institutional contacts and know how the system works. Whether we extended them for 5 years or 10 years, it doesn't. I'm not stuck on a number. I would have to say
they can still retire at 57. It's just gives them the option of hey, if you're still into it.
Let's say we go with 5 years, and we say all of you agents. I know agents now that are working on the Colonial Parkway murders that are coming up on their retirement age. And they go out and work in the private sector, which I have no problem with. But if we could convince some of them to stay on, or at least give them the option to stay on, continue doing the work that you're doing with all of the experience, and then they would bring up some of these new younger agents who need to understand how to solve cold cases. Like in this example, I love the idea. I actually think that's a phenomenal idea. And I don't know how we get locked into these things like you have to retire at a certain age. Clearly, someone who's 57 years old is still mid-career. They're going to continue working somewhere. Why not have them work on solving cold cases?
I agree 100%. And I feel like too that, you know, obviously people live longer these days. People's health is different. 57 30 years ago is not the same
Yeah.
57 today. And I'm sure the numbers, it's some stupid arbitrary number that they came up with. And you think about like judges in certain states, they can just be judges forever. And it's like, oh, yeah, that's a great idea. Not at all.
But at the same time, you can see how extending someone's tour of duty, if you will, in law enforcement for even just another 5 years would give us all kinds of benefit and make it their option. There are a lot of people that are good at their jobs and enjoying the work, and they could make a phenomenal contribution as opposed to going out and becoming a private civilian contractor. Or I know a lot of people in law enforcement, interestingly, because they're nowhere close to being done with their careers, they end up changing agencies. And think about the institutional knowledge that they're leaving behind if they go from one agency to another. But it happens a lot. We should be using our law enforcement resources much better. By the way, while we're up here on the soapbox, the FBI is way too small for the size of the country and the level of work that we're asking them to do. And let's not move past something, which is after 9/11, the FBI has largely been redeployed as an anti-terrorism agency, which I don't necessarily think that the FBI was the best choice for that, but that decision was made. But sometimes as much as...
Don't we have the Department of Homeland Security for that?
We do,
reason?
and I'm so frustrated because in many examples, 90 cents on the dollar of the FBI's budget is going to counterterrorism. And I haven't lost my mind here. I mean, I lived in New York on 9/11. I lost friends on 9/11. I'm not trying to say that we don't need to continue focusing on keeping our country safe. But when you make a decision like we're going to redeploy the FBI largely as an anti-terrorism agency, understand that has consequences. And guess what? The lack of resolution in a murder like the Colonial Parkway murders, which has been an FBI case since day one because it happened in a national park, the lack of resources for the Colonial Parkway murders and other cases like this, that's, you can draw a straight line from the redeployment of assets at the FBI to lack of progress on cases like ours. There's just no way around it.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, there's nothing that the FBI is interesting. There's a great scene in The Wire in the first season where they're trying to get some help from the FBI, and they go to him. They ask him. They're looking for some electronics, and the agent looks at McNulty and he goes, "Yo, man, we're all focused on terrorism now." And that has still, but that was 20 years ago, literally, that when that episode aired. And to think that we're still doing that, and they have all these other agencies that are supposedly doing that, why didn't the FBI go back to doing what their original job was, which was being the Federal Bureau of Investigation
and fighting crime? And again, I'm not saying terrorism isn't a crime. It is. But it can't be all that the FBI does. And just like everything else, if you make a decision to put a lot, some people say 90% of your resources into counterterrorism, that's going to have a cost elsewhere.
It's a cause and effect thing. I mean, it's just, of course. I mean, there's going to be repercussions when you take somebody off one post or one beat and put them on another. Well, guess what doesn't get covered? And
and this is where I have conversations with senior agents who are responsible for the Colonial Parkway murders investigation, saying to me directly, "Bill, we don't have the money to conduct those tests." And from my point of view, that's unacceptable. And then, of course, we end up with this bizarre discussion where I said, well, what if the families and our supporters were to raise funds? And then they say, well, the federal government can't accept gifts of that type. And I said to the senior agent, now you've created a situation, you've painted us into a corner with this bizarre catch-22. You're saying the FBI doesn't have the financial resources to conduct tests in the Colonial Parkway murders. And then when I offer to try to find a way around that, like to cover those costs, you tell me I can't do that. And I said, that's not an acceptable answer. You're saying, no, we can't do that. And then I come up with an alternative and you're like, no, you can't do that either. That doesn't work. It's not reasonable or fair. And these families deserve answers, not just my family, but all the families in the Colonial Parkway murders.
It's almost as if like we gave them $1 billion, they'd still fuck it
up. Well, you're being,
you know what I mean?
Maybe a little harsh, but
my point. No, it's what they would do with the money and what they would how they would distribute it and delegate responsibilities. This feels like something that they need to start from scratch. You know, like, hey, I know we've got this really cool new thing called the Space Force. Why not cold case task force?
Well, since we don't really need a space force, why are you wasting our money? And look, I'm a taxpayer just like anybody else, and I don't like paying more taxes than I need to, but I'd like to see resources properly allocated, which is, I think, where you're going. And, I don't, the idea that we're going to create a space force, that should have just been laughed out of town. I mean, I'm sorry, that's just a stupid idea and a waste of money. Solving 250,000 cold cases across the United States and preventing additional violent crime, I can get behind that. The Space Force, I don't think so.
Yeah. It's like Bill Gates. Like if Bill Gates was like, here's $1 billion to solve this, I feel like it just wouldn't work. Like it needs to be moved to I hate to say it, the private sector in that regard, because it's like, there's too many cooks in the kitchen when it comes to these 17,000 agencies. And,
well, now we're encountering all this resistance. We're asking the FBI and the Virginia State Police to use more private labs, and they're saying no. And we're saying, we're sorry, that's not an acceptable answer.
And we won't take your money.
I mean, come on. This is crazy. Now we keep coming up with, ways. We're not just complaining to complain. We're actually trying to help move things forward. And that response doesn't really cut it. You can't just say no and expect us to accept that. You sense the frustration in my voice. This is something we're dealing with, and I told the FBI, and by the way, people have said to me, including a number of retired FBI agents, Bill, they're not used to being talked to the way you talk to them. And I said, I don't care. I've been waiting for 35 years for answers, and I try to be polite. I'm not saying I've never lost my temper. My Irish temper has kicked in a few times, and my mom would not be very happy with me, but you can't just keep saying no to everything. I'm not saying all our ideas are good ideas, but they're at least worth talking about. So we're going to continue to put pressure on the FBI. The experts tell me the Colonial Parkway murders can be solved, but dragging your feet on advanced forensics, refusing to use outside labs when FBI Quantico is so backlogged, it's insane. These are not acceptable responses, in my opinion.
So what would you like to see going forward as far as your involvement and the FBI's involvement in this? I mean, what would the next step be?
There is evidence in the Colonial Parkway murders that needs to be tested to the nth degree of where we are scientifically in 2022. And that testing should likely take place at private labs. And that's what we're looking for. The other thing is that the Colonial Parkway murders need to be reviewed top to bottom. The more I learn about these cases, the less convinced I am that they're actually related. I'm actually pretty certain that my sister Kathy and Rebecca Dowski's murder, and which is case number 1, and the 4th murder of Anna Maria Phelps and Daniel Lauer, I actually believe both of those murders are not related to the others. The incidents 2 and 3, it's a little hard to say, but I'm pretty convinced that if the Virginia State Police pursued the Anna Maria Phelps, Daniel Lauer murder aggressively, I think that murder could be solved. And I believe with the proper review of forensics, Kathy Thomas and Rebecca Dowski's murder could also be solved.
Now, you mentioned that you have teamed up with the family members. Now, does each family member have a representative?
Everybody does, but some of us are more involved than others. That's not a criticism. It's just kind of the way things developed.
Personalities.
And how much time does someone have? And so, for example, I have more time now. I'm not working full time outside the house anymore, which is great, and that affords me more opportunity to work on our podcast, Mind Over Murder, and focus on this case and moving things forward and talking to people like you.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely important to continue to talk about these cases and continue to kind of hold the FBI's feet to the fire in that regard. Because, at the end of the day, they're the ones that hold the cards.
Yes.
And if they're not willing to, part with them, then there's really nothing that the public can do, which really sucks for. This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp Online Therapy. People don't always realize that physical symptoms like headaches, teeth grinding, and even digestive issues can be indicators of stress. And let's not forget about the doom scrolling, sleeping too little, sleeping too much, undereating, or overeating. I like to think that I deal with my stresses by taking a little bit of mindfulness each day. And I do try to make it a point to focus on myself, because stress shows up in all kinds of ways. And in a world that's telling you to do more, sleep less, and grind all the time, here's your reminder to take care of yourself, do less, and maybe try some therapy. I've personally been in therapy since I was a child, and I would suggest it for everyone. BetterHelp is customized online therapy that offers video, phone, and even live chat sessions with your therapist, so you don't have to see anyone on camera if you don't want to. It's so much more affordable than in-person therapy. Give it a try and see if online therapy can help lower your stress. This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp, and Who Killed Amy Mahalovic listeners get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/who. That's BetterHelp.com/who.
Bill, your point is a really good one, which is the FBI and the Virginia State Police, they control the evidence. And so as a result, the families find themselves in this kind of push-pull situation with the agencies, because the families don't control the evidence, and we're very dependent upon those agencies to move the investigation forward, particularly when it comes to evidence testing.
Yeah, I mean, when you have all of these tools that the FBI has, and then you say that everything's backlogged, well, I hate to be the person that's going to acknowledge the obvious, but maybe we should have more people working on
Agreed.
that kind of stuff. I mean, it just seems like common sense to me, but I know common sense doesn't reign supreme in federal agencies and our government. Definitely not. Definitely not a thing that we have, and that's another episode and a whole other podcast. So. But yeah, you look at what they have to work with, and again, they have all the fucking resources. Pardon my French, but they have them. It's not that they can't afford it. It's just that their focus is not on what it should be on. And the whole thing for me is, yes, you want to protect the company or the country against terrorism. Great. We have multiple agencies that do that. So let's have a reassessment of what you do for the citizens of
Agreed.
this country. Because your job is not to do stuff out of the country. Your job is to do stuff within the country. So focus on the stuff that's going on here, because there's not sleeper cells in every fucking city. This isn't 1996 with, Osama bin Laden. We have a world that we live in. Yes, terrorism is a thing. It's something that every country around the world has to deal with. But we also have a great infrastructure system to protect ourselves against that. Why would we need to add additional resources by taking away from investigating murders and investigating bank robberies, all these other internet thefts, these digital, all these ripoffs? I mean, Bitcoin. I'm sorry. Anyway. But you know what I'm saying, though.
And
like, it's
remember,
like, it's yelling into the wind, man. I'm yelling into the wind.
Well, and the other thing, too, is that I don't think we should lose sight of the fact that we also have a challenge now with domestic terrorism. There are people around the country who have become radicalized, and they are also creating terrible problems for our country. And I do understand that needs, again, time, attention, and resources to be addressed. But I never quite understood the domestic terrorism thing. I understand that's the FBI's job. International terrorism, I never quite understood why that got tossed to the FBI, as opposed to there actually are 17 other agencies who handle security at some level.
Yeah. And again, I thought it was illegal for the FBI to do stuff out of the country, just like the CIA isn't allowed to do stuff inside the country.
All I know now is the FBI has agents all over the world.
It's three-letter agencies.
FBI has agents all over the world that work in cities around the world with local law enforcement.
And I'm sure I'm wrong about that. I think it's the NSA that's not allowed to do stuff here. I don't know, but it's one of those stupid agencies that is supposed to be doing what they're not doing.
I'm not an expert on all things international or domestic in terms of what the alphabet soup of agencies are supposed to be doing. I still find myself baffled as to why 90 cents on the dollar is being used by the FBI in the anti-terrorism category, which leaves the rest of us literally fighting for scraps. And I think if we reallocated resources properly, we could address our challenges in a much more cohesive and productive way. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, especially since I'd like to see what those 90 cents on the dollar.
Well, I'm not implying that it's wasteful. I just think that it's very problematic to devote so many resources to mostly international threats from terrorism. And that means that the FBI has left behind, as you said a moment ago, Bill, a lot of their core responsibilities. So they're not really being properly handled.
And the number one thing, okay, yes, we're talking about cold cases right now. But yeah, I would agree that the number one thing should be the fact that there's been a lot of radicalization in this country. And we should probably be paying a little bit closer attention to what's being communicated amongst these groups. Because, hey, I'm not one for a nanny state, but I'm also not going to sit here and let some clowns, try to do whatever they're trying to do and take us back 250 years. I mean, this is a freaking joke. Focus on keeping the country safe. Don't blame mental health on everything. Mass shootings. How about you focus on that for a minute, you idiots? Like, just focus on something that's not international terrorism, because I get that we haven't had a terrorist attack on our soil in a long
Since
time.
9/11, we've
Domestic.
we've had lots of them, and I don't think we're owning it particularly, and that's a problem. And it's, I'm sure there are people on various ends of the political spectrum that would attack what we're saying. I'm not trying to make this a political statement, but I'm telling you, if somebody is plotting to attack their state house or kill their governor or whatever, that's terrorism, and that is extremely problematic. And whether people think this threat is coming from the left or the right, I don't particularly care. If people are going to plot violence, they need to be stopped.
And this isn't to say, and this is definitely not, I'm not sitting here trying to just totally rag on the FBI, because they do domestic terrorism
Yes.
stings.
Yes.
We've seen it. I mean, that's how they got the people plotting the Whitmer abduction in Michigan. Back in Cleveland, there were guys that were trying to blow up a bridge, and so. But then you get in the whole like messy situation of this is entrapment,
stopping
or is this,
terrorism is an admirable goal. And to be fair to the FBI, I think they do a lot of great work, much of which they can't even talk about because they foil plots regularly, and I have a lot of admiration for them.
Mm-hmm. I do too, and I just feel like it seems to have lost some of its, like you said, they changed up their game plan and the way that they approach investigating crimes, investigating just in general. Like, it just doesn't seem like the FBI, and I'm not, trust me, I'm not saying let's go back to Hoover days, because like I wasn't even alive then, but damn, do I know enough about it to know that wasn't
Agreed.
a good time either. So you can pick and choose which is a better time and place to go back to, but the reality is we can only live in the place that we live in, and that is the present, and the future is the only way that we can look forward. And if we're not allocating the resources towards our future, then we should be, that's just silly. And we need to clean up the stuff that's in the past, these cold cases. I mean, you've dealt with, what has your experience been with dealing with other family members? Because you're very open about, and I apologize, because you're very open about the case, and you've dealt with it for 35 years. And I've talked to Kelsey German, I've talked to Sarah Turney, and they've lost siblings as well. And it's I guess my question is just, how do you keep it going? How are you able to stay motivated every single day? Because this is your passion.
I'm just a stubborn Irishman from Boston that's too dense to quit.
It's like that line in The Departed. It's like, you're going to have to end this marriage. I'm Irish. I'll ride this to the grave.
It's just like that. One of my favorite movies, by the way.
Rough
without
ending.
question. For
ending.
many of the families, I understand that, as I like to say, your mileage may vary. Different family members have stepped forward in an advocate role with us at different times, but it does wear on you. It's sometimes a heavy burden. And I understand that over time, different members of the Colonial Parkway murders families have stepped forward, and then for a variety of reasons have needed to step back, whether it's where they are in their lives, or how fatiguing they might find this advocacy might be. I'm just too stubborn to let it go. The other thing is that I've met so many amazing people. I've been very involved in the Colonial Parkway murders for about the last 12 years, since the story broke that the FBI had lost control of 78 highly graphic crime scene photos in the Colonial Parkway murders, and that got me much more involved. in my sister's case and the Colonial Parkway murders in general. And the people come and go as they can contribute. I think all of the families have helped in many ways, and we do coordinate. But I mean, these days, I would say the Thomas, Call, and Haley families are the most involved, and but the other families are all very supportive. Hey, Bill, I'm going to need to change a
Yes.
connection because my iPhone is running low on juice.
Sure. I can hit stop and just join.
Well, it
Just join
might
back up
not
with that.
completely disconnect. I'm not sure.
Well, I'll just stop the recording while we're doing
All right.
it, and I'll still be here.
Hang on for 1 second. It gave me the
I'm just gonna
10% warning here. Okay.
Yeah, let me hit the stop. All right. So as we were saying, the FBI changing their format as far as what they're investigating, focusing on domestic terrorism, which is all good and stuff. But again, we would like to see some more resources directed towards the investigation into some of these 250,000 unsolved homicides, because that's really where we are. I mean, wouldn't you agree that they should somehow allocate some more money towards some closure?
I would. And of course, our intention once we solve the Colonial Parkway murders, and we talk about this on Mind Over Murder frequently, our intention is actually to pivot to the larger issue, Bill, that you mentioned, the 250,000 cold case homicides. So I'm not just talking about the Colonial Parkway murders when we're having this conversation. That is top of mind for us at this moment. But I actually think we as a country can do a better job than we're doing now.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think there's definitely improvement that could be made on all fronts. I think just general awareness of the fact that there is 250,000 families. Well, I mean, 250,000 people, and then gosh knows how many families left without answers. And you're one of those family members. And I feel like it's important to everybody to get these cases resolved, not just because of the fact that you have family members, but there's perpetrators out there. And we need to close those doors and close those chapters.
Agreed. I'm totally on board.
Yeah, I mean, I think that what you've done, I mean, give us a little bit of a plug on your
Thank you.
podcast.
We've been doing our podcast called Mind Over Murder, which is available on all popular podcast platforms. And when I say we, it's Kristen Dilley, my podcast partner, and I have been doing it for about 2.5 years. We've done over 170 episodes, and we've gotten great response. We don't discuss just the Colonial Parkway murders. We also talk about a lot of the issues that you and I are talking about today on Who Killed. We also have been afforded the opportunity to talk to a lot of experts in true crime. We've met all these amazing people, so we try to take our audience along for the ride, if you know what I mean, to meet these amazing forensics experts, investigators, profilers, authors, all these different experts from the true crime space to kind of inform all of us. And Kristen Dilley and I are learning as we go, and hopefully the audience is enjoying the ride, the experience of talking about our case and then also these broader issues that you and I have been talking about today.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I think that your podcast is fabulous. And I think that it's important for people to know that these things are out there and that there are people out there that really would like to see resolution. And, podcasts like Mind Over Murder and your advocacy are, obviously just second to none. So you really, you're doing what you can, and we can only hope that the other people will continue and the people in charge will continue to do what their job is. And I think on that note, we'll pick up on part 2. But did you have
No,
any
just to say
final
thank you. We really
thoughts?
appreciate your interest and support. And actually, it occurred to me, we should get you to come on Mind Over Murder. What do you think? You can.
I think
We
I
can.
think that can happen.
We can
make
have
it
you wear
happen.
a guest hat as opposed to a host hat.
That would be fun. That would be ideal. That would be great. I'd love that. And when we pick up on part 2, we will talk about we'll dive into a book that you were actually recently involved with as well, and your name seems to make an appearance on numerous occasions
It does
throughout that
indeed.
book. And that book is Trailed by Catherine Miles. And if you have not listened to the podcast I did with her, I think that is 2 episodes ago, and that was a great interview. And that's about the hunt for the Shenandoah murderer, Shenandoah killer, I should say. And again, Bill, you're the best. And we will talk again next week.
Women's Running Stories, where we explore the intersection between running and life. Because every woman who is committed to a running journey has a story to tell, and this is where you'll find those stories. I am host and producer Cherie Louise Turner. I'm a 53-year-old runner, and together with original music by musician and runner Cormac O'Regan, we bring these inspirational stories to life. Please join us to fuel your adventures.
3 a.m., the comedy horror podcast that holds weekly gatherings around the campfire. Let me tell you what you're going to get. You're going to hear stories about demonic possessions, prison stabbings, skinwalkers, glitches in the Matrix, cult leaders, missing 411, night marchers, Operation Paperclip, Mesopotamian devil worship, and so many monsters it'll give Kanye West a runaway for his money. Pop and meme culture also aren't off topic. A camp where laughs and scares are constantly competing for first place. We're just a group of friends, trying to bust each other's balls, find the best stories, and expand the circle in the process. 3 a.m., the comedy horror podcast, not for the faint or fragile of heart. Let's go.
We hope you enjoyed the podcast. Thanks for sticking around. We think you'll really enjoy this next recommendation. Keep listening to discover more great content.
Hello, Delta. How are you?
Hi, Kelsey. I'm good. Something's in the air. I feel like this is a rivalry I'm going to love. I love all of our rivalries, but when I woke up this morning, I was like, I think there's one coming down the pipe.
Something in the air, something in the coffee. You can smell it coming. This one,
Yeah.
I know you're going to love. This rivalry has everything you could want in a rivalry. It has German call girls.
Okay. I like it.
Tiny to non-existent noses.
This is about surgery, maybe.
And moving home to record an album with your sister.
Oh. The first 2 made me think like altering who you look like for espionage or something.
I wish.
Going home to record an album. Okay. I'm on board, though. I'm on board.
Today's rivalry is between 2 toys. One is this iconic legend, and the other is a newcomer trying to succeed where the other one fails.
Okay.
The rivalry today is between Barbie and the Bratz dolls.
Okay, I'm 100% on board with this. One of my favorite things about Barbies was always the shoes, like those sort of like Blanche Devereaux mules, where a mule's just like over the cross of your toe and then the back sort of flaps. That's so 80s. It's not a practical shoe.
No, not at all. And her foot is molded for high heels.
Yes. I feel like I was a little bit generationally before Bratz, although maybe they were around when I was like maybe in my early 20s or so. And I like the way they look. I feel like a lot of drag queens look like Bratz dolls.
Yes, there is a lot of, fashion influence.
And I want more drag queens to look like Barbie dolls, but it's just not happening. I don't look like a Barbie doll.
I don't think it's not like possible for a human to have the proportions. Right. But the whole reason that we're talking about this is the Barbie movie is coming out. Are you excited for the Barbie movie?
I am. The one thing that blew my mind about the Barbie movie was when they cut to the foot, when the shoe came off and the foot was in the position on a real person, on the actress. And that's just a thing, it's always a running thing about Barbie. Like her foot was really in that position. It was fierce. From Sony Music Entertainment, this is Fierce Rivalries with me, Delta Work.
And with me, Kelsey Padgett. Each week, I tell Delta the true story behind an infamous or an underrated rivalry, with all the dramatic and sometimes petty twists and turns.
And then I'll declare the winner, but not every story has a victor. Sometimes it's just about who loses more.
For America's climate goals, investing in clean energy adds up. But what doesn't add up is an additionality requirement for clean hydrogen. Additionality would put an unnecessary and inequitable burden on domestic clean hydrogen producers and have serious consequences for America. America needs clean hydrogen, but an additionality requirement just doesn't add up. Get the facts at cleanhydrogentoday.org. Paid for by the Fuel Cell and Hydrogen Energy Association.
Well, tell me this, Delta. If there was a Delta Work Barbie doll, what would she look like? What would she be wearing? What's the hair? What's going on there?
I'm absolutely connected to Barbie. I have two. One is a Barbie doll that somebody, my friend who goes by the name Fabiance, created for me. And it's an actual Barbie. And then even though, obviously, like you said, the proportions, you can't really get that. Obviously, there are dolls on the market that are plus size. They're not all this plus size. So what she did was creatively dressed it in a way that in something that I might wear, and it sort of disguises, so you can't see the body that well. But it's really the makeup and the hair that send it over the top. And then I have another doll that my friend Raja made for me, and it is based on a Mimi from Drew Carey doll she found at the thrift store.
I love that.
Yep. Yep. She stripped it down and made this like skin tight gown, kind of like, it's really cool. And it's even got like a double chin already built in. Like, I love the whole thing. It's really fun. It's super campy.
Yeah.
And I wish Mattel would make a doll for me. I think I would like to see her in like a really smart, maybe like a suit.
Well, the Bratz, they are a much newer doll. What do you know about the Bratz?
I feel like the Bratz are more like inspired in my mind by like the look of a music video, the look of a red carpet. This is going to probably put me in the dumpster, but not as much style as it is fashion. Whatever the trend is at the moment, they like highlighting. I know they have big heads compared to the body. At least that's what it seems like. And big almond eyes. It's almost slightly a painted up, draggy version of what we've perceived to be what an alien from outer space looks like.
Oh,
right?
You're so right with the eyes. Yeah. Like the traditional, like the grays is the type of alien I'm thinking of. That's so interesting. Now, listen, I am a little too old for Bratz as well. So I thought we would bring in a real Bratz expert, a real Gen Zer, our producer, Gabriella.
I love this. Hi.
Hi, guys. I don't know if I'm an expert, but I do have a very large memory of me playing with these dolls.
Yeah, we need the lowdown for sure. What do you think they're inspired by? Like when you think of a Bratz doll, like what would be the difference between a Bratz doll and a Barbie with regards to inspiration for each character? Because they're all different characters, right?
Yes. So I remember Bratz had 4 main girls when they came out. It was like Yasmin, Chloe, Jade, and there was one more. And they were all brown. Chloe was white. I do remember that. But I remember playing with them and having a distinct difference. They did not hang out with one another. They were not friends.
Oh.
So the Bratz are friends with each other, but they are not friends with the Barbies.
No, they were like really cliquey. Like my Barbies would fight my Bratz dolls because they just didn't go together. It was like Mean Girls. The Bratz were like girls that didn't listen to rules.
Ooh.
I could see that.
And defied people. And we're like, I'm going to wear this mini skirt. And yes, my lip gloss is popping. Like, and as a kid, it was like a big deal to wear lip gloss. So like, the Bratz were doing everything that I wanted to do. And then the Barbies were like, well, no, but you should be a doctor and a nurse. And you just want to get married and drive around in your Jeep. And so I think in my head, I made a distinct difference. And then fashion-wise, every girl I knew wanted to dress like a Bratz. I didn't really want to dress like Barbie. And then I just remember feeling more seen, like as a brat.
Right.
I thought all dolls were supposed to be like blonde and blue-eyed.
And the Bratz, it was in the main line. It wasn't like this is the brown version of Barbie. It was
An exception.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
so the Bratz are a little controversial. Did your mom ever have a problem with the Bratz? Like, you weren't allowed to wear lip gloss, but they were. Did she ever look at that and think, I don't know about this?
I don't remember my mom taking up issue. I don't know if it's just because I have a cool mom. Shout out to her. But I do remember my best friend, who is still my best friend today. Her parents are very conservative, and she was not allowed to play with Bratz, like, at all.
Oh, wow.
Like, I couldn't bring them over to her house. She was just like, yeah, I was basically told that those dolls are like evil, like bad girls that you shouldn't be emulating. I look back at it now and I'm like, they were wearing things that I like shouldn't have wanted to wear as like a 7-year-old. I just thought they were stunning. I do see like there's probably some problems with them now, but let the kids live, let them just enjoy.
Yeah. I think the image of that, though, like just based on the fact that I don't know much about Bratz dolls, just this conversation alone puts in my mind that for many years, historically, quote unquote, women have been told, like, you match your handbag to your shoes. Like, that's what you do. And the Bratz dolls were saying it's not about matching. It's about coordinating. It's not about showing up. It's about showing out. And it's about, like, finding this individuality. I think it's really important now that I even hear this. I'm already surmising how powerful it makes people feel when they can see, like Kelsey said, in the main line, we're starting this by saying that everyone has a different look. Like, we're just starting this with that. We're not like allowing different looks in to go, well, we're going to change our brand. No, our brand is that we're different. And it is that we're powerful. And it is that we give permission. I love it.
Well, Gabriella, is there any other thoughts on that as our expert?
I will say that this was a real life rivalry in my bedroom as a child.
It sounds like it.
Was there ever any violence between the Barbies and the Bratz?
Oh, absolutely. Like, they were drowning each other. Someone got ran over by a Jeep a couple times and backed up on, but secrets only to me. Yeah. And I'm excited to hear you guys take it on and talk about it.
That's great.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Thank you for being with us.
I love it.
All right, so let's get back to Barbie, though, because I want to tell you a little bit about her and her life as we get into this rivalry. Everybody knows Barbie. Everybody either loves or hates her, I really think. It's hard to find somebody who doesn't have a strong opinion on Barbie. Here's some Barbie facts. Mattel owns Barbie. That's the toy company that makes her. They say they've sold nearly 1 billion of her. She's 11 inches tall, and she's available in 150 countries. 9 out of 10 American girls between the age of 3 and 10 years old have at least one Barbie doll.
Wow.
So that's almost every girl in America, which is wild.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Barbie's had lots of jobs, lots of outfits. I went through, there was like this huge website where you can see all the different Barbies, and I picked out some of my favorites, and I will list them now.
Okay.
There's ballerina Barbie, beach fun Barbie,
Love.
roller skating Barbie, day to night Barbie.
My favorite, I think. Go ahead.
Day Barbie has a hat, and night Barbie does not. I think there's some other things that change, but it's pretty funny.
Day to night is my thing. When I grew up in the 80s, it was all about from day to night, just change your hosiery to black and darken your lip. Like, that was the thing. Like, put on a heavier amber fragrance for the evening and a fresh floral for the day. And it was like, you kept that in like your desk or something. Like, I would keep pantyhose in here. Anyway, go ahead.
I love that. All right. Air Force Barbie. Ice Capades Barbie. This next Barbie, you can't tell me she's not a lesbian. Lavender Surprise Barbie.
Oh, for sure. For sure. Lesbos. Lesbos.
Mermaid Barbie. Gymnast Barbie. Flying Hero Barbie.
What does that mean?
She has like
What is flying?
like a squirrel suit.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
And that's really, she's not like a superhero.
It's kind of a
She just has-
superhero, but also maybe also could exist in the real world. Like it's a little, the lines are blurry there.
Okay.
Got Milk Barbie,
Okay. That's specific.
Teacher Barbie, Astronaut Barbie, Baywatch Barbie, which I thought would wear a bikini, but no, she does not. She's fully dressed.
Oh, she works the office. Yeah, I could see that. She takes complaints.
Yeah. HR. And then the last one that I wrote down, because I just felt like has aged poorly, which is SeaWorld Trainer Barbie.
No, they do not. Stop it. Stop it.
Yeah.
That's not good.
No.
That was probably never good.
Probably not. There was a moment that SeaWorld was big and Barbie was in it. So for better for worse, Barbie is a role model for children.
Mm-hmm.
There's this quote. It says that it teaches women what is expected of them in society, even if we don't want it to.
That is so ugly. That word expected is so ugly.
She's had some controversies, more than just the fact that she's like this skinny blonde lady. We've all heard about how Barbie's proportions are impossible, that if she were a real human being, she wouldn't be able to stand on her own 2 feet, which is horrifying.
Mm-hmm.
So in 1963, there was an outfit that you could buy separate from the Barbie, and it was called Barbie Babysits, and it's like a play set. And it had like, an outfit,
Okay.
but it also had a book, a little tiny Barbie-sized book that said How to Lose Weight. And it didn't open up or anything. It's just like a plastic little thing.
Sure.
But on the back side of it, it said, don't eat.
Oh, you can lose weight that way. You really can. But
Right.
this is the expectation. And keep losing weight, because that makes you desirable.
Yeah. So a couple years later, 1965, Slumber Party Barbie came with a scale that was permanently set at 110 pounds.
Stop it.
She's 5'9", but that would be severely underweight for a person who is 5'9".
Yeah.
In 1997, Mattel introduced Becky, who was a friend of Barbie, and Becky used a wheelchair, which is like great representation of all different bodies.
Mm-hmm.
But then if you tried to take Becky to the dream house, she couldn't fit through the doors
Oh, of course.
because of the wheelchair. And then she couldn't fit on the elevator
Of course.
in the dream house. Becky can't come over. And that's a real bummer.
Right.
Mattel has had, missteps like this throughout Barbie's career. Consumerism, fat phobia, racism, ableism, you name it, Barbie's done it. But, she still stays strong. People still enjoy her. And kids love to have this adult woman doll to play with. Before Barbie, most dolls were baby dolls. And, sort of the genius of Barbie was like, oh, little kids want to have a real woman to play with. So in the early 2000s, Barbie's been around for 40 years. She had this really high peak in 1997. And if you think about it, in my head, that makes sense. That's when Barbie was her most colorful and like rollerblading and like just a very exciting time for her. But coming into the new millennium, her sales are going down. She's still America's favorite doll, but it's not as exciting. And this is when the brats emerge. But you'll hear more about that after the break.
For America's climate goals, investing in clean energy adds up. But what doesn't add up is an additionality requirement for clean hydrogen. Additionality would put an unnecessary and inequitable burden on domestic clean hydrogen producers and have serious consequences for America. America needs clean hydrogen, but an additionality requirement just doesn't add up. Get the facts at cleanhydrogentoday.org. Paid for by the Fuel Cell and Hydrogen Energy Association.
Hello, I'm La La La, let me explain. And this is, it's not you, it's them, but it might be you. I'm here to answer all your questions around love, relationships, sex, dating dilemmas, and anything else you throw my way. Join me 3 times a week as we work through the depths of this intimacy pool together. From Sony Music Entertainment, listen and follow wherever you get your podcasts.
The year's 2001. You could turn on the radio and you're going to hear Lady Marmalade. Do you remember that song?
I do. I recorded a version of that song.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I have it. You can find it on YouTube.
I love that. I love that. Very big, 2001. And this is when the Bratz come out. In this moment, they debut with not just one doll, but 4 dolls. And, unlike Barbie and her friends, the 4 dolls were equally marketed. And they were all ethnically ambiguous. Only one of them was white. The dolls were marketed as quote unquote urban dolls, sort of capitalizing on this moment when rap and R&B are dominating the pop radio charts. You got I'm a Survivor on the radio, I'm Real by J-Lo, It Wasn't Me by Shaggy. And I feel like any of these Bratz dolls would belong in any of those music videos. They have the mini skirts and a crop top and lip gloss and exciting hairdos.
Yeah, they all seemed very, very fashion driven and very Video Music Award attendee at all times.
Yes.
Whatever they were wearing, they could show up to any of the shows that MTV was they could be on Cribs, they could be at the beach house, they could be, I don't know, pregnant in 16. I don't know. They could be everything.
They could be all of those things. But this was a time in which I feel like white suburban kids were really excited about rap music, rap culture, which is quote for Black culture.
Sure.
I remember one summer coming back for school and every boy had dyed his hair blonde and was wearing baggy white t-shirts to look like Eminem. It was just a moment where every boy was into rap music all of a sudden and into appropriating that culture in the same way that Eminem was appropriating the culture. Anyway, so I would say that is something that the Bratz are capitalizing. But on the other hand, by having them be, different ethnicities and not just this white doll, you're having more representation. You're having dolls that more closely represent America,
Sure.
And I think that, Gabriella spoke to that. It was nice to not have this is the accommodation of the Black version of Barbie. No, this is, Yasmin. This is Jade. These are part of the main 4 dolls. And I think that was really important. So just as Barbie had gotten called out for her ridiculous beauty standards and being over-sexualized, Bratz do too. But girls loved Bratz. When Bratz came out, they did so well. In the UK, they outsold Barbie in their first 23 months, which was great. Before Bratz came out, Barbie had 90% of the market of toy dolls. But by 2003, just 2 years later, that's down to 70%. So Bratz have started to really eat at this dominance that Barbie had for all these years. So Bratz has come out and they're taking over, and Barbie and Mattel, they're like, what are we going to do? Oh no, we've been popular for so long. We came out in 1959 and finally here in 2001, somebody is challenging us. What are we going to do? And that's when they discover a nefarious secret.
Okay.
The man who had created Bratz had been an employee at Mattel.
Oh, is that bad? I mean, I don't work there anymore.
That's a good question. His name is Carter Bryant, and he worked at Mattel from 1995 to 2001.
But 95 to 2001, that's a heyday.
Yes.
That's a significant time.
He worked in the Barbie collectibles department, designing outfits.
Oh, he infiltrated.
Mm-hmm. That's one way to look at it. According to Carter, it's 1998. He takes a break from Mattel. He was on contract with them. So, he was off for a moment. And it was the 7-month break. He went back home to Missouri, where he was living at home with his family and recording an album with his sister.
Okay.
And, this idea comes to him. The best ideas come on your vacation when you're not thinking about it. He's like, what if Barbie was cool? That is not what he said. What he said was that he was driving around town and he saw these teen girls leaving the high school, which... That's a questionable situation to me, but I understand what could happen. Maybe he's at a stoplight or something. And he's like, these girls are so cool. They're so fashionable and they're so not what Barbie is. They're so quote unquote urban. He's like, these these need to be dolls who are the cool girls from your school.
Right.
And that's when he drew up some pictures and he was like, this is great. This is something I should pitch. I love this. Do you think that's a good idea when he comes up with it?
I mean, we're more aware of like, why are you in certain situations and like what sparked that. But I do think there's definitely a place where somebody who is a business person would look at something and go, let's take inspiration. Who are we marketing to?
Yes.
You want something that you're going to say, I'm almost like her. This is almost a realization of me. We want those girls to buy them.
Yeah.
And if they align themselves with what we look like, we're going to sell the shit out of them.
Yeah. So like more pointing your aim at the girls rather than their parents, I think.
Of course, because they're going to harangue their parents into buying them.
Right. But I feel like past Barbies or past dolls in general, they are pointing towards the parent. Like it's something you want the kid to want it, but also like, you know, making Barbie an astronaut or like this, that, or the other. Like, yeah, that could appeal to girls, but you're really appealing to the parents who have the money to buy the thing for the kid.
Of course, I think so. Because, you know, maybe, especially with so many different kinds of Barbies, maybe there's a dad who is a pilot and is like, I want to buy this doll because she's a pilot or a flight attendant. I heard this quote. It was a pilot telling a little girl on a plane, you know, one day you could be a flight attendant. And the little girl responded and said, or I could own the airplane.
I love that.
Being a flight attendant is a very admirable job. But to say to someone, your job on this plane, it could just cap out at this.
And she just got back right at him.
Yeah, she's like, well, why can't I just own the plane? What's the deal? Like, I don't even have to work on the plane.
Which I love. Okay, so Carter, he has this idea to make these cool, trendy teen dolls. We could see this as a good idea, right?
Yeah, I think.
He does not pitch it to Mattel, which I find to be confusing, but he doesn't. He pitches it to another toy company. And he said he didn't conceive of these dolls as competitors to Barbie. He didn't know what would come of it. He had no idea that, you know, it was going to become this whole big thing. He's just got some drawings and he submits them. He's like, my coworkers, they do this too. Like, we all have ideas and we hope to get these dolls made and, you know.
I'm confused as you are because if you do have this great job there and you're looking for the next thing, you would want to bring it to your company and say, hey. And if the company said, we're not interested, that's not going to work for us. I don't know, then maybe you figure like, well, if this is my passion, maybe I need to move it to somewhere else. But to not give them a shot, I mean.
Well, that will be one thing that Mattel argues in court. Well, this other company, which is called MGA, they say, yes, let's make this doll. And he's like, hell yeah. And so he quits working at Mattel and he goes and he works for MGA and they make this doll and voila, we have Bratz. Problem is, Carter, when he joined Mattel, he signed an employment agreement, a contract, and it said any inventions that he came up with during his employment with Mattel were the property of Mattel.
That's a hard one because it is a different doll and it is, I think based on what the type of work that he did, maybe it is a responsibility to at least offer it to them. At least just say like, can we do this? And if they say no, then especially, you know, he wasn't a custodian there. Is what I mean. He wasn't a custodian there who had that in his contract and was like, I want to come up with these dolls. I know no one's going to listen to me. I'll never make it into a meeting. I'm just going to do my own thing.
Right. No, he was making, you know, clothes for the dolls. Yeah.
The dolls.
Guess what? Everybody sues each other. Mattel sues Carter. Mattel sues MGA. MGA countersues Mattel. Carter's like, oh my God, what's happening to me? Oh no. But of course, he's having all this success with his Bratz dolls, so I'm sure he's not that upset. But it turns into a whole big thing. In the mess of lawsuits, who are you rooting for? Should Mattel now own Bratz? Should they get some part of the royalties? Should it just be like, whoops, like what should happen here?
You know, I feel like every single week, you make me question my own feelings about what would I do?
Oh, yeah.
And what have I always thought? I really mean that. And so, like, with this one, I'm even thinking like, okay, well, have you ever signed a contract that you then thought like, oh, wait a minute. I didn't understand that wording. Like, I feel like at this day and age, like you have to probably have like 17 different lawyers, no matter what you're signing a contract for. And you have to pay all of them to come in and go, this could be twisted to mean this. This could mean that. The only reason that they would want to sue is because they're like, actually, you're making a lot of money. Right. And we need a cut of that money now. They're not doing it because they feel like, you know what, you ethically stole from us. Mm-hmm. We are really in the business of creating images for children, and we think they don't care about that. Because if the dolls had been released and they sold 1,000 over, you know, the whole world, they would be like, who cares? We don't want your lousy 49 cents. But if it's, you know, more money than you're going to get in small claims court, they're going to jump on top of it, right? That's the only reason they're doing it is because they're being greedy. But legally, yes. Legally, it does say that. Ethically, you don't care ethically. You're just doing it because it can amount to another check and you want it. That's it. But I do follow rules, and Barbie's technically following the rules, so.
Technically. Well, I'm going to tell you a dirty little secret about Barbie.
Please tell me it's about the call girls, please.
It is about the call girls.
Oh, thank God. I was waiting. I want to know how much for the hour, how much for the half. That's my question.
Oh, and I'll tell you that right after this break.
You always want to take a break.
From Othertone and Sony Music Entertainment, introducing Drapetomaniacs Unshackled History, a brand new podcast from board-certified YPPOologist and Dean of Black Twitter's History Department, Michael Harriot.
I'm Michael Harriot. You might know me from the phrase invited to the cookout or as the author of Black AF History. Now, every week I'm going to unwhitewash American history for you. I'll use music, research from Black historians, and a slate of celebrity guests to give you a true version of the history you think you know.
Before consuming Drapetomaniacs Unshackled History, please note that listening to this podcast while watching Fox News may cause you to throw up in your mouth. Do not take Drapetomaniacs if you've ever messed around without finding out. If you believe third graders are learning critical race theory, Drapetomaniacs may not be for you.
Drapetomaniacs is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, and from wherever you get your podcasts.
Beginning around 2015, something strange began to happen in Hollywood. A con artist was calling film industry workers and offering them huge jobs on big-budget movies, always in Indonesia. Hundreds of these workers have taken the bait and flown to Jakarta, only to find there is no movie. It's all a lie. From Campside Media, it's Chameleon, the unbelievable true story of one of the wildest scams in history. Hosted by me, Josh Dean. To listen to the show, just search for Chameleon, Hollywood Con Queen on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts.
So, Barbie has a dirty little secret that I think might make you feel differently about whether or not they should win in the court.
Okay.
So we got to go in a time warp. We're going to go... We are in 1952. Welcome to Hamburg, Germany.
Okay.
We open up the tabloid paper, this tabloid paper called Bild-Zeitung, and let's read this cute little comic strip. It's got a quick-witted escort named Lily, who lives a fabulous life seducing wealthy male suitors. In today's issue, she's being reprimanded by a police officer for wearing a two-piece in public, something that was banned at the time. Weird.
Sure.
And she shoots back at the officer. She says, okay, which part should I take off?
I mean, fair question. I've been there.
Oh, that Lily. So this comic strip is this popular one in Germany at the time. And Lily is this, you know, raunchy call girl in this comic strip. But they also make a doll out of her, the Lily doll. She's, you know, about 11 inches high and has blonde hair. And, you know, it's the kind of thing that it doesn't make any sense to me now. But apparently at the time, this doll is a gag gift. It's like, you know, you go to like a bachelorette party and they have like, I don't know, penis straws. That's what this doll is that kind of thing. You would give it to somebody as a joke because she has boobs and she's an escort. This is not a doll for children.
Right.
So, it's 1956. This tourist shows up. Her name's Ruth Handler. And she sees the Lily doll and falls in love. She's like, look at this cute thing. This is so hilarious. I love it. She happens to be on vacation with her 2 children. Her 2 children named Barbie and Ken.
You are so lying to me. You are completely lying.
And I think you can see where this is going. So she buys a bunch of these Lily dolls and sends them back home to California, back home to her toy company that she had co-founded with her husband to create an American version of Lily. And that is Barbie, the teenage fashion model, debuting in 1959.
Wait, Barbie was always supposed to be a teenager?
Yes, which I
Hold on. That's also additionally disturbing.
Additionally disturbing, but most disturbing is that she was this German call girl from the comics that you would get at a bachelor party.
And also, I mean, even if this doll was originally made to be like a fun thing, like a gag gift or whatever, I find it so interesting how many people like have no problem appropriating somebody else's art. Is there an image of the original doll?
Yes.
Oh, God. That is the doll?
Yeah, I'm sharing you that. Yeah.
That's the original call girl doll.
Yeah, the Lily doll.
It's 100% Barbie. I mean, come on.
Okay, so we're looking at Lily. Lily has these arched eyebrows, thick lined eyes. She's busty, has a thin waist, is wearing a red striped swimsuit with black pumps. The very first Barbie has similar makeup, similar body shape, only she's wearing a black and white swimsuit and open-toed heels. It's 100% Barbie.
Did they even change it at all?
So they say that they changed it some, but I can honestly not see much of a difference.
I think I see it in the feet. The feet are a little more fetishy in this one. That is a very fetish foot.
Fetish foot, okay.
I'll tell you right now. Because that's a Betty Page kind of arch.
Ooh.
Do you think that the actual vintage Barbie, like when you look at her face, do you think she kind of looks like it a little bit? Like, look at the face and the forehead and everything. She's kind of in the sewer a little bit.
Oh my God, because she's really pale.
She's scary, Georgie.
Yeah, man. I'm feeling it. What do you think about the fact that she named it after her kids?
This is what I think. I bet you that person was on vacation and was just so sloppy and messy that she went into some little shop and was like, oh my God, look at this whore doll. I'm going to give me like, what do you have there? Give me like 5 of them. And we're going to send these to the factory and we're just going to sell them as is. And she probably jacked up the price. And then they were like, you know what? We sold these really quick. And she's like, make more. Who cares? It's 5 o'clock somewhere. She's the original wine mom. I bet you she wore a shirt in 1964 that said wine mom.
My mom. The slander against Ruth.
She does not sound like a very ethical person at all.
Yeah. Okay, so the fact that Barbie is theft, intellectual property theft, is so clear, right?
Yeah.
And, the company that owned Lily sued Mattel, but they lost. So they sold Lily's rights to Mattel in 1964.
For like nothing. I think it has so much cred if you own a Lily doll. Like I would love somebody to gift. If I was gifted a Lily doll.
Yeah.
Oh my God. That's fierce.
Right?
That is fierce. Oh, I want a Lily doll so bad.
Send Delta a Lily doll.
I want it so bad.
I mean, because what they did to the Lily doll was worse than what Carter's doing, right?
100%.
Because Carter came up with a new thing. He didn't steal Barbie.
And actually just go like, let's just make a mold of that, please.
Right. So just to recap where we're at, there's a bunch of court cases going on between all these companies. It's the early aughts. Mattel has sued MGA, so that's Barbie suing Bratz, claiming that Carter's designs were the intellectual property of Mattel, so that Barbie owns the Bratz design. They also sue Carter himself personally, And that same year, MGA, who makes Bratz, countersues against Mattel, saying that the latest line of dolls, the My Scene dolls, copy the Bratz doll looks. And somewhere in there, Lily, her creators decide to get into the action, and they sue Mattel for millions in royalties, claiming that they were pressured into that earlier settlement and that they were actually owed royalties for all this time that Barbie has been using Lily's look. And they lost that court case.
Of course.
So there's a bunch of lawsuits, like I said, and they go on for a really long time. But it all culminates in this one court case where this thing happens. The lawyer defending Bratz, MGA, and Carter, he's questioning the Mattel CEO. So the Mattel CEO is on the stand, and the lawyer says, okay, say I'm 18 years old. I'm doodling away, and I put my little doodles in one of the drawers in my parents' house. 20 years later, I'm hired by Mattel. And then I visit my parents' house. I find these doodles. Does Mattel own those doodles? The Mattel CEO says, well, first, what do you think he's going to say?
I don't know because just tell me. Because I can't do this. This has more twists and turns, I think, than any of our rivalries. Honestly, maybe I'm super invested, but I don't know. I'm going to make myself look like an idiot more than I normally do.
The Mattel CEO, he says, yes, probably yes. Under the contract that Carter had signed, yes, if he drew these drawings when he was 18 and came back home and picked up these drawings, then yeah, we would own that because of what that contract said. That's crazy, I feel like. What do you think? You think that's wild?
I mean, it is crazy, but the bigger company is always going to come out the victor.
But it seems crazy to me that you could sign a piece of paper that basically gives away your creative rights from your whole life.
Right.
For the time that you're employed by that person. Like, that just...
In the fine print, there's anything. But then somebody has to interpret that.
Yes, absolutely.
A judge or a jury or somebody has to interpret that.
Well, guess what? The jury does interpret this, and they say, that's crazy. No, Mr. Mattel, no CEO of Mattel, you can't do that. And you know what? Carter didn't do anything wrong. He didn't steal anything from Mattel. He didn't owe you every invention he ever had in his mind, even if he did draw the Bratz dolls when he was working for you. And you know what? You need to pay damages to Bratz for all of the legal fees and all the stuff that they've been going through.
Wow.
It's $300 million in damages.
Whoa.
During that time, Bratz had these huge successes. You know, in 2002, they won Toy of the Year. Revenue rose to $2 billion a year, which was wild. And, you know, in a true mark of success, they faced their own controversies, just like Barbie before them. They had a secret date, Bratz, where the boy who was in the box with the girl was a surprise.
Ooh.
So you knew if you had Chloe or Jade or Yasmin, but you did not know who the boy was. And parents were upset. They were like, this teaches girls to meet up with strangers.
This is like Tinder brat. Glory hole brat. Surprise, surprise.
Oh, no.
Surprise, surprise.
So in 2006, we found out that the labor is used to produce the Bratz dolls is really, really underpaid people. In China, they work 94 and a half hours a week and we're only getting paid 52 cents an hour. 2007, the American Psychological Association raised concerns over Bratz sexualizing young girls. We could see that coming, you know.
Yeah, we knew it.
More outrage. Girls are wearing tight clothes. How dare they? So unlike Barbie, Bratz did not have the staying power. And unfortunately, their popularity waned as their original demographic aged and other dolls became popular, like Monster High. In 2016, the Bratz were discontinued. But they have had a huge impact on fashion recently, which seems a little odd, but if you think about the age that the kids were when they got dolls, they're now in their mid-20s and they're, you know, having influence on fashion trends. So in 2019, there was this fad that everybody was doing on the internet where they would do makeup to make themselves look like a Bratz doll. Did you see some of those makeup videos?
I've seen that. I've seen that.
The fashions that are popular now are things that Bratz dolls would wear. It's like the Y2K Renaissance fashion. In 2020, MGA launched a new Bratz line, an anniversary collection of the dolls. And everybody was so excited. But then they almost immediately got called out for stealing a clothing design from a designer who had posted their clothes on Instagram.
Jesus.
They say it was an accident. They meant to collab with the creator, but they forgot to, or there was human error. The person who was supposed to reach out and be like, hey, can we purchase this design from you? Did not do it.
Oh, no, that wasn't a mistake. No. Listen, come on now. We know how many people are in line to make a decision to do anything when it comes to anything.
You're so
You got to go through Peter, Paul, Mary, and everybody else.
There's no way.
No, ma'am.
There's no way that happens.
No, ma'am.
Well, so Bratz, they've had their ups, they've had their downs. Barbie remains strong, though. Remains the dominant doll of the fashion doll market. And, a few years ago, they added dolls of different sizes, of, different bodies to sort of help their issues. They even added the, I don't know that they call them this, but they're like the curvy dolls.
Uh-huh.
Which are the dolls that are not as thin as Barbie. Have you seen those dolls?
Yeah, I have seen them. I need to see a little more, but...
I agree. I got one the other day because I saw they had a park ranger one. And I was like, I'm doing this story on Barbie. So I was very excited. And she came. And I immediately undressed her because I've got to see the body. I've got to see. Is she rotund?
You're a lesbian.
No. And guess what? She's not. She is very average size. She
has normal hips and
normal hips. And also, guess what? Still a huge thigh gap.
Of course. Of course.
And also, I don't know what the state of Barbie's undergarments are on other dolls, but this doll has chunky, big underpants. Just diaper-looking underpants.
No. Why?
And that's fine if they want to do underpants, but are they specifically making the ones for the curvy doll ugly? Because that's not cool. My final question for you, Delta.
Okay.
Between Barbie and Bratz, who is the winner?
I mean, unfortunately, even though they were based in some really, really shitty ways to establish your legacy, Barbie does leave with the biggest legacy. And I do say that they're the winner. They didn't win in court. They didn't win in my ethical opinion. But when all is said and done, when anybody that I know refers to a doll, they don't say, I want to buy you a fashion doll for your birthday. They say, I want to buy you a Barbie. The same way I would say, Kelsey, will you hand me a Kleenex? Right. But it's really facial tissue from Target.
Right.
So I feel like Barbie wins.
Okay, so I hear you that Barbie is the legacy. She's winning. She's still going today, just as strong as she was always. But I do think Bratz did a lot for representation. 3 out of 4 of the original dolls were people of color. So young girls got to see dolls that looked like them in a way that clearly resonated and changed how the whole doll industry was working. I would argue that what Bratz have given us and the way they changed our world is maybe better and makes them a winner.
Yeah, I can see that. And like I said, I mean, in the court of ethics, no, Barbie is she's sitting on a completely and total fragile throne. She was stolen. And what about Ken? Did Ken even speak up for anybody? Hello?
Come on, Kenneth.
You're still here with your plastic hair. From Sony Music Entertainment, this is Fierce Rivalries, hosted by me, Delta Work.
And me, Kelsey Paget. I also produce the show. Gabriella Santana is our associate producer. Caitlin Pierce and Megan Dietrich are our editors. Tiffany Walker is our managing producer and editor. Our production coordinators are Sasonia Davenport and Tamika Balance Kolosny. Our theme music is by Allison Leighton Brown. John Scott is our engineer. Our executive producers are Lizzie Jacobs, Caitlin Pierce, and Megan Dietrich. TJ Raphael was our development producer.